Here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk through each of the different, and there's three, I think, main ones that we need to discuss. The third one's probably more, it's not as big of a discussion, but it adds to it. But at the end, we want to ask the question, did the game get altered by the referees? I want to say this loud and clear for any, I don't care what fan you are, Auburn, Oklahoma, just some fan from another fan base trolling, whatever. We here, I'm speaking for myself. I think Austin agrees with me as well on this. We do not believe in just obsessing conspiracy theories about the refs. The refs are not out to get Auburn. There is nobody paid until you can present some proof of that to me. I'm just going to call you just a weirdo and think that you've got nothing better to do but just think about crazy things. However, you can't ignore some of the things that do feel like they happen a lot, and it do be like that sometimes, or it do feel like that sometimes, as the kids say. Auburn, your team, whatever. You should not put yourself in a situation to let the refs' mistakes affect the outcome of your game. Never should happen. You hold a more responsibility 99 out of 100 times. I think for the very first time, we have a question of whether or not the game was altered. We'll answer that question at the end. But we're talking about three main plays here, which I think continuously just need to be questioned here. One has been addressed. So should we start with that one, Austin? The one that's
yes,
I figured, because there's no disputing this one now. The SEC has admitted fault. What are we talking about? We're discussing an illegal play that was not caught by the referees. So good on you, Oklahoma, for bending the rules and getting away with it. Like, credit to you. Now, what I want Oklahoma fans to recognize here is any defending of this that you're doing just doesn't help your case, doesn't make you look good. Your coach this has been by multiple sources. Your coach actively tried to do this and knew it was cheating and lied about it.
Practiced it all week, apparently.
Practiced it all week from a very reliable source that's pretty well connected with that program. And to lie about it, act like you knew this wasn't illegal, that's real sleazy. So that's not a good reflection on them. All right. SEC office has admitted what happened. The player acted like they were coming off the field. They were instructed all year that you cannot do that. It's called the water bucket play. I ran it in high school as well. And look, when it was legal, it was legal. When it's not, it's not. And it was not a legal play, should have been called back, should not have been touchdown. That does not mean that Oklahoma still doesn't score on that drive. I mean, it was still a lot of momentum shifting at that point. Austin, it's just so difficult to make peace with.
It's incredibly difficult to make peace with. And look, I'll be honest, it's very similar to Virginia with double dribble. Not a lot of us knew in the moment, right? Like, not a lot of us knew right there as it happened, said, no, you can't do that. That looks like a double dribble because it went off your knee and then your foot. Or that looks like a deception play, and that's illegal this year. But the pros and the SEC analysts, referee analysts came on very quickly after, said, you cannot do that. That was harped on this year. Coach Freeze said it post game. That was talked about pretty heavily all off season about not doing that. New and improved OC from Washington State comes over and decides he's going to do it. And so
and they off do people after he does it.
And so look, they, at the end of the day, the SEC has already assured us it's wrong. And so and that they'll handle whatever appropriate action they think necessary. And so, make sure the Band-Aids are out for the slaps on the wrist that are coming. But the fact of the matter is it shouldn't have happened. It did. They're not going to take a touchdown away, and they're not going to retroactively call it a tie. But it happened, and it's really unfortunate that Auburn falls the brunt of it. Now, I think that there's a real question of what happens if it is called. Because a lot of people say, well, they would have scored anyway. Well, I mean, we got the Heisman front runner, blah, blah, blah. It's 2nd and 22. You get a 15-yard penalty unsportsmanlike at 2nd and 37. And that's out of field goal range at that point in the game, and Auburn's defense playing like it was. I just think it drastically affected the game in that scenario, especially.
Yeah,
put a lot of momentum on Oklahoma. Now Auburn, look, they came back and took the lead. We all know that at some point that they at some point did take the lead, But it should not have happened. And we count on these referees who are experienced, and we trust them to know the rules. They go through all off-season workshops, just like coaches and players do. And they, the head of officials, all these heads of officials come to media days all over the country and explain what the new things are this year, what they're doing. And in the first conference game of the year for both teams, we can't get it right. So it's frustrating. Yeah. It's unfortunate. I'm with Kyle. I don't think there's any kind of conspiracy against Auburn from Birmingham or these referees, like no matter where they're from or anything. I think that's absurd to mention, but it's unfortunate. But I don't think you can see any way it doesn't affect the game. And those that want to laugh and benefit from it, well, that's fine. But
don't worry about that. They're gone.
The conference has said what it is. It does not change what happens. Yeah. It does not change what happens, and it worked out in Oklahoma's favor. So props to them. But
as we said, props to you bent the rules. You knew what you were doing, and to lie about it and to defend it is just a poor reflection on your team, your fan base, all that kind of stuff. Certainly. And so just accept it. You cheated. You got away with it. It's fine.
Props.
Move on. Props on you. Let's move on to the next one. Let's talk about the overturned fumble for a touchdown. Now, admittedly, this one, there's room for discussion about it, right? I mean, everybody, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you're going to say, well, he didn't complete the catch or he didn't make a football move. I think there's evidence to suggest otherwise there. But whatever you want to say. In terms of defending it, Auburn fans are going to say he did. Of course he did. Look, we all need to recognize our bias in this situation. The big thing is that it was ruled a fumble, run back for a touchdown by K.N. Lee. And that did not have enough evidence, in my opinion, to be overturned, because that is the rule thing. It needs to be upheld. What's the official terminology there? Or
upheld is now what we're doing now.
Upheld, or evidence needs to be sufficiently given to overturn it, whatever. So that one is a huge momentum swing. First opportunity of the game for Auburn to just take the energy out. And unfortunately, it was the sign of things to come. So in hindsight of everything, if you want to, honestly, you could really point to this one as the one that probably made the biggest dent in the trajectory of the story. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah. Well, that one from the very beginning with just the opening drive for Oklahoma's offense and being able to see what I got to stop looking. What Oklahoma was driving and Auburn being able to make sure they go down and have a stop like that. Like you said, it's the call on the field, right? That's the biggest component of all of it. And what we all think is what that matters, which I think they're taught nowadays, to let the fumble play out and see what goes, even if he runs it back, and see what happens before we look at if it was a legitimate or not. They go back and like you said, and we're looking at it through orange and blue glasses. I totally recognize that. I don't see how there's enough to overturn and change what you saw on the field through the angles we saw. They did. And I think that is the most unfortunate part of both of these scenarios we've talked about, is that they both directly altered the scoreboard, right? So many of these times, these big plays we talk about, and it's like, well, we don't know what would have happened, or they might have scored anyway, or there were legitimate scores and into the end zone, and they were either taken away or they were still added. And those do affect the game right then and there. It's not so much of a domino effect at that point. It is, and how the rest of the game is played, but those are real examples very quickly.
Right.
No, I don't think that it was incomplete catch. And I know. I've got orange and blue on right now. I understand it. But I just don't see how you overturn that. I think there's a lot of neutral people also who have contributed to that argument. At the end of the day, like we said, it happened and it went the way it did. Thought Auburn's defensive front did an incredible job holding them to a field goal there. It's still points they got on the board that Auburn did not. So
absolutely. Yeah, definitely some room for discussion there, but it's still very much more on the biggest evidence I will give of that is the neutral places agree with Auburn on both of these pretty much. So definitely the first one. Second one, still some discussion to be had. Now, this third one, look, this is just kind of adding on to it, and it doesn't need to be discussed as much, because what this is just a referee not being turned around properly, which frankly needs to be addressed. I get that you're trying to get out of the way of the play, but hey, Auburn calls what was actually a really great play call to run a wide, I guess you'd call it it wasn't a halfback pass, it was a wide receiver pass, double pass.
What a throw, by the way.
Eric Singleton?
Didn't know it. Did not know he had that.
I was not familiar with your game, sir, in that way. What a pass. I mean, look, probably a little high, but it's Cam Coleman. And as he had been showing the entire game, you just throw it in his vicinity unless someone is literally hugging him. Can't argue this, Oklahoma fans. Pass interference the entire way. Literally, we have photo. You can go to our social media. Got the image of him being hugged as he's reaching up to go get a little bit high of a ball, but it's in Cam Coleman's window, and that's the rule with that. It is, without a doubt, pass interference. The referee has his back turned, can't see it, and that's to take. That would have been. We did score eventually on that. So that's another argument from Oklahoma fans. That you scored eventually. So it still matters because that's more time on the clock, which means if you guys score, we have more time to work with. Thus, hopefully our offensive lineman can get it together and not have a horrendous last drive. Wow. So, I mean, you had enough sacks already. What was a few more?
Right.
So I think it's as simple as that, Austin. It adds to the frustrations of this. It builds the story. The refs wrecked this game for Auburn. Is there anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think that it was pass interference. I don't know. I don't think they've asked the Oklahoma defensive back individual, but in college, it's just 15 yards instead of the spot of the foul. For all we know, he was trying to do it instead of give up the touchdown. But like you said, it was more in this case of the referee not being able to, the closest referee not being able to see. I wouldn't want to get run over by two D1 college football players either. So I understand him running. But I think that when you look at that, it's another example in this game of the referees having an issue just calling the game at all. You build quite a resume here. Now, like you said, and I totally agree about Auburn scored anyway. I understand that, and I think that that's a big key in this one, and why this one's not as big. The other two, we don't know how it would have played out. In this one, we got to see thankfully. You could even argue there was a little makeup call there if we want to go in solidarity here, Oklahoma fans, that there was that Auburn ended up getting the points anyway. And that certainly is a case to say, well, what does it matter? Certainly that is a big case, but no one wants to see the game affected by these referees, right, especially a marquee game like this. I truly think that this was probably the best game of the day. I didn't get to watch a lot of other ones. But
there was some good football, but this is good. Yeah,
I think this was one of the better ones of the day, and it's just unfortunate. This is what we're talking about, the majority of it, and all across the national landscape, not just on this show,
right?
Not just Auburn fans whining, quote unquote, but the vast majority of people across the country are talking about how difficult the officiating was in this game. So it's unfortunate. Oklahoma wins. Look, please hear me say, Oklahoma won.
And they did enough.
I predicted Oklahoma would win this game last week.
I did as well.
Right. Okay, so it happened, and I get that, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So
I will say this, and I just want to put this out there because I'm not like going all the way here. I'm not saying, but how unfortunate is it for our sport that if we get to the end of the year and this game is in the loss column for Auburn.
Yep.
And we're all talking about it on what it matters. Should they get in? Should they not get in? That's just not good for the game. It's not good for the game. And I think that's where most people are at. From most level-headed people are at with this is nobody wants to see these referees in black and white decide some of these games and affect some of these games. We want to see these kids who are now employees. We want to see these kids and all their talent be able to make the plays on the field.
Absolutely. So once again, to kind of conclude things here and answer the big question, let me just put this all out there because as you've been able to tell, if you've been in a live chat, there's been some Typical responses from some Oklahoma fans. Once again, discussing something is not crying about something. It's called having a discussion. Adults understand that. Those that
there's not much else to do out there.
Regurgitate the same things on social media and act like they're brave on. So, I mean, Oklahoma fans that have been good, that have been in the chat, that's your people. You need to deal with them. Or else we will. So, look, the question is at hand. Did the referees change the outcome of this game? We have walked through each one of those scenarios. Here's what I'm going to say, Austin. I'm even going to take the non-pass interference. Let's take that. That was worth discussion.
I'm not worried about that one.
Let's go. So here's our
caveat. All things were made even there.
let's do that. Let's give the caveat to the Oklahoma fan base and to anybody disagreeing with us, which nobody besides Oklahoma fans are disagreeing with this, that are being reasonable. That one's out the door. The first touchdown being called back. That right there to me is big enough for the momentum, knowing what we know about the rest of the game. And look, it's a butterfly effect. I addressed this in the post-game show. You don't know what changes the trajectory of this and that, but we can make some assumptions. Oklahoma's offense really wasn't having a ton of success against the defensive Auburn for the majority of the game. So we can reasonably assume that continues. We can reasonably assume that Auburn's offense, while not outstanding, was able to move the ball enough to get into position to win, aka the fourth quarter win. So that alone, a 7-point swing right there, it puts it at least in the discussion of, hey, they probably would have been at least in a close, maybe a tie situation with that, maybe more so on the Auburn side of the momentum thing. When you factor in the inability to call the play, once again, if you continue to justify it and not just own it, it just makes you look bad at this point. You cheated. Your coach lied about it. You didn't get caught. Well done. Listen, that's part of the, this whole discussion about recruiting is like, it's not really how well somebody recruits, it's how somebody can bend the rules enough to not get caught. Look, we all know it happens. I'm not going to say that Auburn's not ever done something like that in a game or anything like that before. I'm sure people had problems with Gus Malzahn. And he was probably a little bit tricky with some of his things. But I believe for the very first time, I can truly say this, that the game outcome was altered by the referees. Once again, Oklahoma fans, hear me say this. You still did enough to win. You still deserve the win. I'm not even taking that away from you. I think people disagree with me on that because I said this in our, I think you deserve the win.
I agree.
It is a win in your column. Auburn was cheated out of the win. The outcome has come. All those things can coexist together. And if you can't accept that, you just can't be part of a reasonable conversation. Your thoughts?
I certainly think it can all coexist together too. And I hope that people hear this and they won't, but they'll take snippets of this. But I hope that people can hear this and recognize that for Auburn people, it's the fact there's a sense of pride that despite all that, Auburn had the lead in the fourth quarter. Despite 10 sacks, yep. Auburn had the lead in the fourth quarter. And now looking, and I think there's a whole picture here too of what Auburn football has been through in the last 5 to 7 years is that despite all of that, Auburn still played enough and did enough to win, and it was taken from them. And I think that it's understandable to see it the other way with your team. We've got the most passionate fans in any sport that are in college football are the most passionate fans. And I think that you can see it was I don't know how you could say the game was not affected. We're talking about the outcome. And I think we both view the outcome as affected. And as no one's ever going to fully agree on this totally. And that's fine. At the end of the day, like we said, Oklahoma won the game. They've got zero losses in their loss column. Auburn's got one.
Nothing's going to change that.
We'll see if it plays out down the road someday.